morning, Bennington College. Good morning. Thank you so much to President Walker. Thank you for inviting me, and I'd like to also thank the amazing commencement team for inviting me back and for making me feel so welcome. I'd also like to extend that warm welcome to our distinguished guests, parents, families, loved ones. Um, and I also want to give my deepest thanks to the wonderful Bennington faculty, many of whom were also my professors and who helped me. Yes, yes. And who helped give me so many of the tools I needed to make my way through the world after graduation. My dear, dear professors, you all look as beautiful and brilliant and impressive as I remember. Mark Wonderlick, please drop the skincare routine after. Please, thank you. But without you faculty and your hard work of making tomorrow's thinkers, American colleges would have no foundation and no fire. Without many of you, I wouldn't be standing here. So thank you. And then finally, I want to welcome and congratulate the graduating class of 2024. Yes, yes. Big up yourself. Class of 24, I want to speak to your hearts from my heart. So I kind of wish that you were seated in a different way, but I'll try to speak directly to you all. When I was asked to be this year's commencement speaker, I was immediately filled with pride at being bestowed this great honor, brimming with feelings of joy that this full circle moment proved that everything I did after I left Bennington was exactly right. But soon, those joyous feelings were swiftly replaced with panic. It turns out writing a commencement speech is perhaps the most difficult writing task I've ever been given. I had absolutely no idea where to begin. And this is not because I'm a procrastinator. I am. But because I care so deeply about what I wanted to say to you all in this very crucial moment in your lives. Unlike a commencement speech, when writing poetry, I usually follow a familiar path of uncertainty. I wait for the page to open up its mysteries. I wait for the poem to reveal its music to me. I wait for the muse to touch my head. Well, it turns out one simply can't wait for the muse of commencement speeches to touch your head. I don't even think she exists. Um, and in truth, confession, I don't remember my own commencement speaker's words. And maybe that's okay. But today, in this moment, I wanted to ace this, the ultimate writing prompt, especially with all my former professors watching. So I don't usually think of myself as a prescriptive writer. I usually stay away from platitudes and allow the metaphor to contain its own meaning. But today, I think I will tell you a story. First, I'll start with acknowledging how poetic this moment is, my prodigal return here to Bennington. It's absolutely incredible to be back here after my own graduation 14 years ago. I'm very grateful. In many ways, I never thought I'd be back here, and in many ways, I always thought I'd be back here. And though I know part of the reason I've been invited back is because I represent what a successful Bennington grad looks like, but I'd like to put success aside for a little while and talk a little bit about failure and what it's taught me. Now, I pride myself on being a perfectionist, so no one is more shocked than me that I am going to talk about failure. But let's start here at Bennington College 14 years ago when I was a senior getting ready to graduate, and I applied to be the student speaker at Commencement. I wrote the perfect speech and submitted it. And in the days that followed, I waited for the confirmation from the president's office that my speech was chosen. And I slowly began to imagine myself standing right here on the lawn in front of my fellow graduates, speaking gloriously to thunderous applause. Then the email from the student office came. I opened it to a message that said I was not chosen. This simply just did not make sense with my fantasy. I was angry, I was embarrassed at my ambition, but overall I was crushed. How could my speech have ended in failure? I believed myself, even then, a worthy writer. And back then, I believed, wrongly, that any rejection I received was a resolute reflection of my worth or a reflection of how unworthy the college thought I was. And that week, while having lunch in the Red Room, I declared to my friends, I swear to you, I will never step foot on the Bennington campus again until I am asked to be the commencement speaker. Yes, yes. And sure, I know you're thinking that I did manifest this wish, but I want to talk a little bit about the road to getting here. There are some lessons that you learn quickly, and some lessons that come to you with the benefit of time, distance, a bit more wisdom. So in preparing today's speech and remembering the failure of my senior speech back then, I actually went back and looked at my rejected speech to see what advice, if any, my younger self had for you. Too wounded by the rejection, this was actually the first time I'd read this speech since I'd written it 14 years ago. And it turns out that what I had written was not the perfect speech. Don't get me wrong, it was a very good speech for a 20-something, one that was complex and erudite, full of nuance. But there were many parts that I found my current self revising and cutting away almost immediately. In it, I talk a lot about Greek philosophy. I mention that Rothke lost his mind in the orchard. I quote Yeats and reminisce on Don't Stop Believing being Canfield's party anthem. I don't know if that's still true. I quote Ayn Rand, shudder. And I even have a passage where a white-haired Aristotle climbs through my dorm room window, which is Franklin, middle window at the top. Reading it was like greeting a stranger in a train station, only to discover mid-conversation that this was a person I knew intimately all along. Because above else, I came away from my senior speech feeling inspired and hopeful. Because what my younger self had really written was a love letter to all the myriad things that Bennington had taught her, coursing through her like a current. Ultimately, the primary advice my younger self had for her fellow graduates was to live the next stage of our lives as if we were creating a poem. I found this suggestion incredibly moving, and it showed me where I needed to begin today. Imagine that. My wisest lesson had been waiting 14 years for me, and I had written it all along in a speech I'd buried away as a representation of my failure. This is the lesson I have again for you now, that a poem is like a life. By this I mean, so much of the creation of poetry, like life, involves uncertainty. For me, I never truly know where a poem will end up when I begin. There is a resounding doubt from line to line of what will come next on the page. So I always begin with something I'm passionate or curious about, a line or an image, a metaphor, and I follow that obsession into the unknown. So this is the first thing I will advise you all to do as you embark on this new phase of your future. Let your curiosity and your passion guide you like a poem. Become familiar with your hunger. That hunger that was nursed here by all your excellent professors, you must let it guide you in whatever you do next. That unknown path will be filled with false starts and wrong turns, and you'll never quite know where you'll end up. But if you get it right, you not only change yourself in the journey, you'll leave the world behind you changed too. This is what my younger self wanted to tell her peers 14 years ago. In my senior speech, I wrote, "The Greek word for poetry is poiesis, which means the act of making or creating. This follows that your life and what you make of it too is poetry. In many ways, life itself is the greatest form of art," I wrote. That each active decision we make creates a tiny universe of its own, a web of threads that go ahead of us in infinite futures all at once, and no way to know which is the right one. I wrote that 14 years ago. Yes. For a long time after I left Bennington, I really got stuck on the idea that there was only one right way, only one right road, one right future. I believed that if I just delayed the choosing, I couldn't possibly choose wrong. I'm a Libra on the cusp of Virgo, for anyone wondering, yes. But one can't live a life like that, to think and overthink and do nothing at all. It's not only brave to voyage out into the unknown, but it is necessary. So, how did I overcome this feeling of being stuck? My younger self wrote, "The only way is to find a staggering city of possibility. And this is the art of poetry making." And over the years, I've learned this to be true and would like to impart to you on this gossamer fine morning in New England that the best way to navigate a major ending such as this one and to cultivate the new beginning ahead of you is to nourish and chase the same belief in possibility that exists in the process of making art. That passion that filled you while you were students here, the current that coursed through you when you created or discovered or invented something, let that be your future guide. Trust yourself as you are now, even in your failures. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Please give yourself grace, even if you don't get it right the first time. This time goes by so quickly. Just know that you don't have to have all the answers right away. And it's okay to stumble around in the cave before you find the path out to the light. It's crucial that you don't rush anything. I feel like I spent so much time as a college student feeling like I was always behind, that I needed to read more, do more, accomplish more. And now I wish I took just a little bit more time to appreciate this moment right here in my life. It's okay to slow down in this fast-paced world. It's okay to touch grass, as you American youth say. In many ways, success is only sweetened after faltering. This world is a very hard place to be, especially for young people. We are handing you a world on fire, and it's okay to take your time to figure out your place in it. The most important choice you have now is to be the caretaker of your own moral architecture. I truly believe that there is nothing more important to humanity today. Be a good and principled person if you can. This world is filled with so many who measure success through the vectors of power or capital gain and never think of success as the possession of an inner life guided by morality. As I learned over a decade ago in my beloved philosophy classes with Karen Gover, who's sadly no longer here, but I learned in her classes that the function of a good and successful life was becoming your best self. I still believe that this is humanity's greatest subject, its greatest poem. Seeing your best self reflected in your friends and family. This is how we create a future beyond the one we can imagine. I want you to always advocate for yourself and for what you believe in. Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. I certainly was not while I was here. Many people think of college as the place you go to get your idealism or liberalism out of your system before you enter real life, and the capitalist society hammers your dreams out of you. But as a poet born in a small seaside village in Montego Bay who made it here to this podium, I implore you to keep the dreamer alive, because that humanist sensibility will be the one thing that keeps the world turning toward a better day. I'd also like to challenge you all to see the world beyond America, for you all to be global citizens. I've been so heartened and reassured by all the young people across the US who created college encampments and took a principled stance against the genocide in Gaza. And this morning, yes, yes, yes. And this morning, I'd like to acknowledge their bravery and the great hope I felt for the future in their fight. Thinking now of this future, I want to reiterate that call for an end to colonial violence across the world, a call for a permanent ceasefire and an end to the genocide in Gaza. Yes. I truly, truly hope to see a free Palestine in my lifetime, a free Congo, a free Sudan, a free Haiti. Yes. The fight for a better world is hard. As someone from a place that is often designated a developing nation, I know this all too well. But in Jamaica, we keep our eyes fixed on hope, and we have a national motto that says, better must come. And though the path to this future we want to see will be difficult, we must not give in. We must not give up. Better must come. Just as I've learned with making poetry, trying and failing and waking the next day to try again, with time, you might see that this journey ahead of you is not so much about success, but what is gained in the trying. Here is living proof. From the failures of my younger self came this very speech. So please embark on your new lives today knowing this. Sometime in the future, you will be called to action. Some new and terrifying and unknown challenge that you must triumph over. Whether it's to organize and advocate for a better world, or to sit at the bedside of an ailing loved one and care for them, or to speak some words of encouragement on a bright morning at your alma mater. And you might be surprised to find, like I did, that your past self has already done your homework for you. And if this call to action seems overwhelming, it is. But I'm confident that Bennington has already prepared each of you to be a positive voice in this world. Each of you is already a poem in your own way. Each of you, your own kind of voyager. And now is your moment to choose the kind of world citizen you want to be. Tell me, what kind of song will you sing in 14 years? To our future trailblazers, freedom fighters, change makers, to the guardians of our future, welcome. We've all been waiting for you. Thank you.